And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Welcome to RBLR Sports. I'm Musab, and you are tuned in with the RBLR Bucs Mob. Well, preseason is officially behind us. The roster has been cut down to 53 players, and we are just 11 days away from the regular season kickoff. September is almost here. Fall is right around the corner. Football is back, folks, and life is absolutely fantastic. If you are as excited as we are, hit that like button or that subscribe button. Let's keep the vibes rolling. All right, well, a little recap. The Bucs fired off a couple cannons with the Miami Dolphins, and let's be honest. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. It was still exciting, but we got to keep it real. It was preseason, got a little bit sloppy at times. That's why some of these players might not be with us anymore. But just like RBLR, the Bucs mean business. It is what it is. Now, besides recapping the game against Miami, we'll go over some news and updates and a little spicy NFC South predictions. But more importantly, we want to remind you that when you listen to us, you're not just a listener. You're part of our crew. That means you should speak up, drop a comment, or share your own thoughts and hot takes. All right? If you think we can find a better long snapper, let us know. If you think Trask should start over Baker, let us know. All right? And I keep saying we and us. All right, maybe some of us may not like to hear that, but if this is your first time here, you best believe you got to get hyped, because to my right, we got someone who's like the Bucs star quarterback. He is always ready to deliver the perfect pass of insight and analysis. He brings the energy, the know-how, and that swagger/flavor to every conversation. Mr. Zach Blaine, how goes it?
The fact that you just compared me to Baker Mayfield may have been the nicest thing you've ever said to me in my entire life, Musab.
I had to make up for it after I said that Trask over Baker thing, so
I'm so appreciative of that, man. I'm doing good, brother. I'm excited to get on here and talk football. Excited that we got our 53-man roster, which means we're just that much closer to Sunday happening and us playing football, man.
Hell, man, I'll tell you this, man. I'm already happy because we got college football back. I saw that Georgia Tech FSU game. That was nuts. So
listen, Oregon State plays Idaho State this Saturday.
Oh, all right. Well, they better win, because I think Idaho State's it's like the FCS team.
They might be. They might be.
Oh, but speaking of that, shout out Montana State for winning that game. But we gotta introduce the final piece of our iconic trio. Of course, he is our stats dynamo and the equivalent of a top tier defensive back, which maybe the Buccaneers may not have. But he's got the numbers, the strategies, and the sharp instincts to break down every play and prediction. He's here to tackle the tough questions and deliver those crucial insights straight to your ears. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carter Brantley. Carter, what's going on with you, man?
Chilling. Was super happy to see Georgia Tech beat FSU because, I despise FSU, so that's fantastic.
Oh yeah, why is that?
Just FSU people are just the worst, man. I don't know how to explain it.
All right, then.
Sorry. I feel the same way about UF, if that makes anyone feel.
Yeah, I don't like UF. Yeah,
they're both equally bad for me. It's just, growing up in Tampa, you got to deal with all sorts of FSU and UF fans. Even people who actually go to other schools are still like FSU or UF fans instead of being fans of USF or whatever school they went to. Anyway, sorry, Musab. I know that was kind of
no, it's all good, man. Overall, I have to say, I've always followed the Bulls, but I got to say that freshman year, watching the Knowles, watching Dalvin Cook in front of my eyes, everyone doing the chop. Unfortunately, I don't think USF will ever be able to match that.
Course,
but
for sure,
it's all good.
That's all right, though. I gotta rep the Bulls.
Oh yeah, we'll go Bulls though.
For sure. Anyways, like we said, the Bucs played a little preseason game this past weekend. Took down the Finns, 24-14. It was nice to get another preseason victory, even if it's ultimately meaningless. It's still nice to see the guys go out there and do their thing. But we won't spend too much time on that game. We'll kind of sprinkle in some game analysis throughout the episode. But I wanted to start with the running back room because I thought that was kind of an interesting development over the weekend. Chase Edmonds, he's unfortunately out for the year with a knee injury, which, that that sucks. Hopefully he's able to bounce back next season, whether it's with the Bucs or not. But for now, they've got Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving. How are y'all feeling about this backfield, this running back room? Zach, I'll throw it right back to you, my man. How are you feeling with Sean Tucker and Bucky behind Rashad White?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. That was on my 53-man roster prediction. I assumed it was going to be that. I didn't think Edmonds was going to make the team, so him being injured sucks. But I guess like in a roundabout way, it lets him stay around the team, which is nice. But
Yeah.
outside of that, I kind of expected it to go this way anyway. So I'm excited for it. I think Tucker really proved himself this preseason, and I'm excited to see that trio of backs continue to build.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they all bring a little something different to the table. White and Bucky can kind of overlap in some aspects, but I think I've been really what's kind of been the thing to see on Twitter, at least Bucks Twitter. Bucky's been really impressive in pass pro, which is really fun because Rashad's definitely going to do his thing, running routes and stuff like that. So I'd be really curious to see if Liam Cohen gets creative with having Bucky and Rashad White out on the field at the same time, maybe just mix in some two running back shotgun sets or what have you. That'll be really fun to see because that's not really something that we've seen too much with the Bucks over recent years because they just
they haven't had the talent to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Come on.
She was probably thinking about the prospect of, yeah, exactly. Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones taking,
I miss those days.
Yeah.
I really do too. I miss Fournette, but I'm excited to see the Bucky Rashad duo. I think that it's going to be electric this year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm coming around on Bucky quite a bit. I know Musab and myself were both pretty low on Bucky as a draft pick, but man, he's really impressed over training camp and the preseason. Mr. Tariq, how are you feeling? Speaking of Mr. Tariq, how are you feeling about this Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving backfield backup combination?
I'm with it, man. This was the three-headed monster. I think I had mentioned a couple weeks ago. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've never known too much about Chase Edmonds, but what I've kind of just I've come to a conclusion. I mean, this guy was already past his prime. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, and at the end of the day, he didn't really contribute much. I mean, we felt like he should have, but I don't know. So this was kind of meant to be. It's nothing personal. It's just strictly business, and I felt like Sean Tucker was he was due to be actually on the depth chart and make that 53-man roster because I believe I think last year he was just on the practice squad.
Yeah, he spent the majority of the season on that practice squad. I think he came up for a few games, but it was very limited action for sure. So yeah, it's going to be exciting to see him get a little bit more run throughout the year. Absolutely. But for shifting our attention back to the game itself, the starters got some run. Not everyone. Mike Evans didn't play. Levante David didn't play, but Baker Mayfield got a drive in, and Rashad White and all those guys. But only one drive. It was an immensely successful drive. I will say it was fantastic. Baker looked great. We'll talk about Jalen McMillan and his miraculous catch in a few moments. But yeah, I was really impressed with the starters. But are y'all surprised they didn't get a little more action than just one drive, or were you kind of satisfied with, hey, it was a really high note, let's leave it at that, call it a day type thing? Mr. Tariq, I'll throw this question at you. Were you surprised the starters didn't get more than one drive?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, they've been keeping these guys moving all week long and all that. I think it was just like, hey, listen, let's just try out what we've been practicing. It was beautiful, the first drive. So they're like, hey, we did what we were practicing or what we practiced, and the boys got it. So no need to, no need to risk it. I mean, it's just preseason. Plus, listen, it's the final preseason game, so a lot of these, kind of, role players or depth pieces, they want to get as much as action as possible. So, you kind of want to respect that as well.
Yeah, I mean, for some of these guys, unfortunately, it might be I don't want to say the last time they ever play in an NFL game, but that's unfortunately the reality. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from there. And like I said, it was such a successful drive that why not just have it be a one and done situation? It was very interesting and really, really fun to watch them go out there and do their thing. But Mr. Blaine, maybe you disagree. Maybe you think the starters should have gotten more run. I know you love to watch Baker, so maybe you were looking for more Baker action out there, or
So,
maybe you're just
yeah,
happy.
that was it. It's realistically probably the smart thing to do because freak injuries happen. God forbid Baker go out there and go down in the final preseason game, and we have to deal with Trask all season. So realistically, it's the smart thing to do, and I'm for it. But also selfishly, I'm like, I would have loved to see a second or third drive of that group because we looked pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really fun little cameo, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
Just kind of a little short inclusion, but yeah, it's okay to have it just be a drive. It's sort of the don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened type of thing. You want to go that route, but yeah, it was certainly a really fun drive. And especially for Jalen McMillan, he was a lot of fun. He had a ridiculous catch on a jump ball down the field that set up the touchdown, which eventually was a rushing touchdown from Rashad White. And J Mac, well, I'll start calling him J Mac. I don't know if that nickname's going to catch on at
It's
all.
going to. It's gonna stick here at RBLR.
Gotta
That's
be,
all.
yeah.
Let's
J
do it because
Mac, yeah.
McMillan's just kind of a mouthful. It's also the name of the company that I work for my day job. So I'm not really trying to say all that. So J Mac, he was named wide receiver 3. It was kind of a constant conversation throughout this offseason. Like, oh, is it going to be him, Trey Palmer? Maybe even Sterling Shepard was kind of mentioned, although he was eventually cut. We'll get into that. But yeah, J Mac was named wide receiver 3. What are your expectations for him this season, Mr. Tariq? What are your thoughts on J Mac being named wide receiver 3?
I mean, I'll tell you this, and I think you mentioned as well, Carter, that I think he was kind of in the shadow of it was Polk and Adunze at Washington. I mean, he still balled out, of course. So, what I'm expecting him to just kind of bring that fresh energy. I think something new to the receiving core, and I mean, he's already shown, that he can do whatever it takes. I'm expecting him to build that chemistry ASAP. I mean, I think looking at him and Palmer, it's kind of like a 3A 3B situation. If you really ask me, I think at the end of the day, you just gotta pick one. At the end of the day, one's got to be the starter or something. So, I mean, I think it's going to be a good season battle. But as of right now, I mean, yeah, you got to run with McMillan, especially the way he's performed this preseason. Because correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember where I saw it, but I think he's only played like 15, 16 snaps or something like that, but he's racked up some pretty like elite yardage for 15, 16 snaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think rate wise, he played really, really remarkably well in the preseason. But like you said, he was kind of the third fiddle at Washington, and he's going to play kind of a similar role here in Tampa. So the hope is obviously that he continues to be successful in that kind of role. But I'd also be curious to see because K. Dotton, I think we can all agree that K. Dotton's a fine tight end, but I don't know that he's one of the best pass catching tight ends in football. So it'd be really interesting to see if they line up in a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, maybe have McMillan and Palmer out there with Evans and Godwin on the field at the same time. Again, these are kind of interesting, different things that Liam Cohen could bring to the table just because of the personnel that the Bucs have. So yeah, I'd be curious to see how that all plays out. But Mr. Blaine, what are your expectations for J-Mac coming into this season?
Well, I think there was one point earlier in the preseason that I said he was going to be our other 1,000-yard receiver this season.
Yeah.
And it might sound crazy, but I'm still for it. I think that he's ridiculously talented, and I see him and Mike Evans having really big years.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how both of them play, especially together, because I think they both bring sort of different things to the table. Mike Evans very physical. Same with Chris Godwin. They're both very physical wide receivers. McMillan's more of a clean route runner. So I'm pretty excited to see how he can kind of mix things up and, like Musab said, bring some fresh energy to this wide receiver room. But obviously, J-Mac being named wide receiver 3, we're talking about the starters and all that stuff. But unfortunately, there were also some cuts that had to be made because 53-man rosters came out. They had to reduce the number of players on the roster. Were there any surprise cuts for you, Zach? I know for me, just off the top of my head, I was a little surprised to see Mike Green not make the roster, the interior defensive lineman. I thought they'd carry a few more interior defensive linemen, but I think they're going to stash him on the practice squad, which that's totally fine. But were there any other surprise cuts that that you thought of, Mr. Blaine?
Sorry, I'm trying to work around
No, not
a
at
baby
all.
right now.
You're good.
The biggest surprise to me, I think, was Cody Thompson not making the team.
Yeah,
He,
he put up some big
he
yardage.
had a very good preseason, and at one point, I think even Baker was kind of raving about him. Uh, so him and really just the fact that we only kept 5 wide receivers on the squad was strange to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. It was a bit weird that they didn't maybe explore carrying a sixth guy just because special teams is a thing. But I guess they're expecting to be able to fulfill those special teams requirements throughout other positions. They carried quite a few linebackers. I know J.J. Russell was kind of a surprise making of the team for me. Um,
11 defensive backs.
Yeah, 11 defensive backs. So they're looking in other areas to fill those special teams requirements, and I kind of understand that a little bit, especially since Sterling Shepard, if I think he's going to end up on that practice squad, they can always bring him up if injuries
Yeah,
happen.
so far I think they've brought Shepard back at wide receiver, Cody Thompson, and Ryan Miller.
Yeah, and those are the 3 that I think we all expected to either make the team or make the practice squad. Um, so that's a solid group for sure, because then you can kind of think of it like, oh, well, then they have 8. I don't want to say starting receivers, but 8 rosterable receivers.
Yeah, 8 good receivers that, like you had said on my prediction, I had all 8 of them making the team.
Yeah, which that happens. But Mr. Treek, how about you, man? Anyone we didn't mention that you thought, oh, I'm kind of surprised he didn't make the team?
No, I'm actually probably just going to piggyback back off of Zach. If anything, it was just the wide receiver core. I mean, there was a lot of those guys who could, fight for that last spot or that 6th spot. It was all kind of fair game to me. For me, it would be really hard to pick them. So that would be the only one, though. I mean, the 11 DBs at first caught my eye, but thinking about our past situations and our history of DBs, it makes sense, and I think, who knows? Maybe perhaps we're just trying out a whole different approach. Maybe Todd Bowles has now decided. Now I'm just going to really try some new things out on the defense, focus on the defense, putting maybe more trust in Liam Cohen. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting concept to explore, especially with the defensive back situation being what it has been over the years with the injuries and all that stuff. So maybe the Bucs are trying to safeguard against that. They also understand that Zion McCollum, while I'm sure they believe in him and they're excited to see what he can do, they also understand that he's limited. He's probably not going to exactly be Sauce Gardner out there, to say the least. So maybe they're kind of building in some insurance plans in case Zion McCollum struggles early on and they need to make a change. But speaking of Zion McCollum and kind of keeping that status quo, there were every single player except for 9 have spent their entire career as Bucs, which I just thought was fascinating. They don't have a lot of roster turnover, which is very different from how a lot of other teams do it in the NFL. So what are your all's thoughts on this overall sort of philosophy on roster construction, sort of keeping those guys? I know we've talked about the Bucs love to keep the guys they've drafted, but this is even an extreme situation, even for them, I'd imagine. So what are y'all's thoughts on this, Mr. Treek? I'll throw it right back to you. What are your thoughts on the Bucs sort of organizational philosophy with roster building?
I like it a lot, man. I like this player development pipeline. I mean, what I prefer at the end of the day is winning, and we let go of guys when we got to let them go for the most part. And I guess it probably just shows others that we got a great culture out here. Look, I get it sucks we lose, but to me, I feel like there's some sense of pride knowing I'm a Bucs fan or we're Bucs fans. It's a different topic if you're like, I don't know, maybe like a Giants fan or a Jets fan, maybe, or something. I don't know. Sorry to target you, New York, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's kind of an interesting sort of way of thinking about things, because a lot of other teams, like the Raiders, my goodness, I mean, you want to talk about turnover. They barely hang on to their first round picks. They drafted Alex Leatherwood first round one year, and he was gone by the next season. I mean, that's just kind of unthinkable for the Bucs. But it's kind of interesting because some people think like, oh, well, they need to do a little bit more roster shuffling to keep things fresh so that they don't keep they prevent things from getting stale. But they've also had a lot of success over the past few years. So I think that they've kind of found
It's a
something
job, you just got to find the right people,
for
and
sure.
that's just really what it is. The best companies, they retain the most employees, and then there's companies out there that have a really high turnover rate, especially those typical corporate ones that you can probably think of from the top of your head. So
Right.
um, that's just how it is.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Jason Light wants to also emphasize that he believes in their scouting department, and rightfully
Hmm.
so. They've done a solid job with a lot of draft decisions. So, he wants to reward that faith and reward his own players that he drafted with their success, by keeping them around, giving them contract extensions, stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of an interesting topic to explore. Mr. Blaine, I know you might feel differently, especially with the secondary, especially. But what are your thoughts on the Bucks sort of keeping things
Um,
homeostasis, I guess?
yeah, it's such a weird situation to be in because if anyone follows me in here on Twitter, you know how much shit I talk about the Rays' inability to keep players and the roster turnover is ridiculous. But then we get into football, and I'm like, damn, it wouldn't hurt to get rid of this guy and bring in like a big name player, like I'm all for homegrown talent. I enjoy it. I think to a certain extent though, you gotta know when to give up. Like bring in an established DN because respectfully, JTS probably isn't the answer there. Bring in an established corner because Zion McCollum probably isn't the answer there. I agree, Hazel. Yes, it's that bad. Um, but but it just I think there's certain situations where like I love keeping the people that we drafted and that we signed as undrafted free agents, but there's some people that I wouldn't mind letting go of and bringing in more explosive talent.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, more established talent for sure. That's definitely a good point. Poor Hazel's just crying thinking about the prospect of Zion McCollum starting at the outside cornerback position all year. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting concept to sort of explore. But to finish out this first half of the episode, I wanted to talk about some additions that or I guess, yeah, a few additions that they made. Royce Newman, he's an offensive lineman, an interior offensive lineman from the Packers. They claimed him off of waivers, which I thought was kind of interesting. They let go of Brandon Walton as a corresponding move for that. They also signed a quarterback from Tulane, a rookie to their practice squad, Mr. Pratt. And Wolford is out. He is now a free agent. Kyle Trask quote unquote, won the backup quarterback battle. So what do y'all have any, intense thoughts about this? I mean, how intense can you really think about Royce Newman and a practice squad quarterback signing? But Mr. Treek, I'll start with you, man. What were your thoughts on these signings and these transactions?
Oh, you're telling me you weren't sitting by your desk pondering, looking out the window? No. I didn't know much about Royce Newman, and I said, listen, I have to find a little bit of information, stuff like that. So I went on a couple like Packers pages, and I think I went on like Packers Reddit, just to see how people feel and all that. And it appears the guy, had a solid rookie year, but kind of just went downhill. Then,
Yeah,
matter of
fell
fact, I
off.
think someone compared him to like, oh yeah, we already had that kind of situation with Devin White.
Yikes.
So, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm for it. But I mean, it's just I don't know. I don't have too much to say about Brandon Walton, and then with the practice squad, Michael Pratt and then Walford out. Um, I mean, it doesn't really mean much to me just because, yeah, it's just practice squad. I mean, it will, if Baker does go down, then it's Trask and Pratt. Yeah, we'll
Right.
see how
Yeah.
that goes. But
Yeah, I think
that's all
things
I
could
got to
get a
say.
little ugly. Yeah, things could get real ugly real quick if we're
Trask
talking
and
about
Pratt. Oh,
Michael Pratt and Kyle Trask in any significant manner throughout the year. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Someone made a good point about Walton was sort of seen as a Swiss Army knife offensive lineman. He could play on the outside. Royce Newman is certainly not that. But Elijah Klein is someone that they kind of view as someone who could potentially fill in at left or right tackle, I suppose. So that's it's kind of fun. I think that's kind of an interesting little topic to explore. The offensive line versatility, and then Pratt. I don't know much else to say about him and the Super Bowl winning quarterback, John Wolford. I mean, it's a shame. He was looking like he might snatch that backup quarterback spot, but unfortunately, he experienced an injury, and Trask looked okay against the Dolphins, so I think that might have played a little bit into that as well. Mr. Blaine, how about you, man? Do you have any final thoughts on this first half of the episode on Royce Newman or any of these guys?
Royce Newman, I know nothing about. I will be the first to admit it. Yeah. Michael Pratt, on the other hand, I'm excited about him. I know that a lot of people don't really know who he is, but the dude threw for like 9,000 yards in college. Like he's a pretty solid quarterback who I think might not be a bad developmental project behind Baker. I don't want to say I'm higher on him than Trask right now, but I'm more excited about him than I am about Trask.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a fair point, because Trask has been in the NFL for 3 years now, and he apparently hasn't really shown what he's needed to. And Pratt's a new face, he's a new dude. He can come in and just Bucks can kind of shake things up, see if there's something new that they can explore. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm not necessarily super knowledgeable about Pratt. An American Conference guy though, so go Bulls from Tulane. So that's cool. But it's interesting.
I wouldn't be surprised, Zach, if he does ball out, because the way I see Trask and Pratt is like Trask is like an 18-year-old freshman in high school, and Pratt is a 15-year-old freshman in high school. I mean, they're both at the same level right now,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, they are both. Yeah,
one guy's just got more maturity. That's really it. Or
yeah.
only so much maturity. The guy's still in ninth grade, if you get what I'm saying.
I'm more concerned as to why you said an 18-year-old freshman, Musab.
We got held back.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, Trask is essentially still a rookie. I get what you were going for. I see where your head's at, Mr. Tree.
No, I saw where it was at. I just had to throw that out there.
For sure. But if you're looking for the anti-Trask and the anti-Pratt for your wardrobe, if you're looking for like a Baker Mayfield caliber, option for your clothing, then definitely head to the shop.rblrsports.com website. We've got it all. We've got some really, really great stuff on there. You'll notice that things look a little different because we've revamped our stuff, and we've got some really great stuff on there. We've got a USA basketball themed t-shirt, and we've got some Bucs gear. We've got all the Tampa Bay sports stuff ironed out. So if you're looking for some more gear to show your fandom, definitely check it out. And we'll give you a promo code that's Cannon, CANNONS. Type it in for 10% off your entire order. All right. So in this second half of the episode, we're going to get into some division stuff, kind of looking around the division just to talk about some fun stuff there. But before we do that, I'd love to start with kind of a fun little segment. It's right to be wrong. I'm kind of calling it like that. And it's sort of a player that I want y'all to focus on or talk about that you're high on, but you're okay with saying, I might have overly ambitious expectations for this guy. And I'll kick things off. Chris Braswell. I'm really high on this guy. I think he's going to have a really fun year because he's going to get ample opportunity, with JTS and Yaya being who they are, JTS especially. I think Braswell is going to get a bunch of opportunities to show what he can do. And I don't know. He's really exciting when you watch his college tape. And the Bucs spent a second-round pick on him. He's not exactly a diamond in the rough kind of thing, but or a hidden gem, as Musab would say. But I'm pretty excited about him. And even if he doesn't necessarily end up working out this year, I'm still excited about his future moving forward. Mr. Treek, how about you, man? Who's your guy for this segment?
I'll probably just go with Tyke Smith. I think I'm high on him because I feel like, the Bucs got him for a reason. I feel like I was thinking the same thing. I know Zach was also quite frustrated with the Tyke Smith choice, which was, we wanted a cornerback and, we got this safety, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just high just because, this guy's come from Georgia. Bucs picked him pretty early. I think it was third round.
Mm-hmm. Third round.
If I'm wrong, third round. So, he's a third rounder for a reason. And, hopefully he balls out. But it could take time. And I'll tell you this, it's not easy being a DB. And our DB room has quite a, I don't know if I want to call it a turnover rate or just a failure rate. Maybe that's what I want to say. So, yeah.
Not very successful. I get your point.
Yeah, for sure. Mr. Blaine, how about you, man? Who's your guy that you're okay with being wrong about, but you're excited?
Bucky Irving, because I mean, I think he's going to be solid, but if I'm wrong, it's okay because he played for Oregon.
I knew that was coming.
I mean, respectfully,
Man.
I hope he's good. I think he's going to be pretty good. But if he's not, it is what it is. We didn't draft him too terribly high,
Yeah, no.
and he's an Oregon Duck. So if he flames out, then I go, oh, well, told you guys, Oregon can't do anything. Like, we're good.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited for both of those guys as well. I think looking back, I've definitely come around on a lot of these Bucks draft picks these past year. I think they're going to have a really, really nice season for a lot of these rookies because the way that these Bucks teams operate, they're going to give young guys a lot of chances to either succeed or fail. And some of them are going to fail, unfortunately. But I think that all three of these guys that we just mentioned are going to be a lot of fun to watch for good or bad, for better or for worse. They're going to be interesting things to follow, interesting storylines to follow as this season goes along. But now we'll take a look at around the division one last time before the regular season begins. Who do y'all have as sort of a surprise team, either good or bad? If you think that maybe it'll be surprising that they take a big step forward, or maybe it's surprising how bad they are. Mr. Tariq, I'll start with you, man. Who's your surprise team for either direction?
I just think I don't know exactly how to say it because I don't want to just generalize this idea, but I just think the Falcons are just not going to do what people think they will, especially with like the Kirk Cousins signing and people believing in Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts and the rest of their young core like Drake London, for example. I don't know. I think best case, they put up a good dogfight, with the Buccaneers, and I don't think the Buccaneers are going to be stellar either, to be honest. So it's just going to be another battle of like who's on top of shit mountain. But that's the best they would do is what I'm saying. That's the best. I don't think they're gonna have any. There's no chance they're just gonna surpass us easily.
Right.
I really don't think they're gonna shine. I think there's just gonna be some hiccups here and there that are just gonna kind of fall. It's just gonna make them fall apart.
Yeah, and I definitely get you because they got a lot of really high performance from their defense last season. And
Hmm.
they brought quite a few guys back. They also brought in Matthew Judon. But I don't know that success was necessarily sustainable. So I'm kind of with you. I think that their expectations are a bit higher than what their reality probably will be. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting team to keep your eye on. I'll take the next one. I'll take the Panthers. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, and this is a good surprise. I think they'll be better than I think we all, myself included, originally thought going into this off season. I don't know. I've just become a little bit more open minded to their signings that they made and the draft decisions. I think the receiving room is probably the most risky proposition, just because they spent they traded up into the first round to get a wide receiver that's a bit on the older side. I think we all like Xavier Leggett, but it's a bit riskier. They have just a lot of sort of risky investments in that wide receiver room, but their offensive line is so good. And Dave Canales, I think, is going to do a great job as sort of the de facto offensive coordinator. He's going to do a great job with Bryce Young in that offense. I think they're going to be a little better than we all think, but not necessarily playoff caliber. Not going to go crazy, but I'm right. I'm a bit more of a believer in the Panthers now that this season's about to start. But how about you, Mr. Blaine? Who's your sort of surprise team?
I think the Saints are going to suck.
Oh,
Mm.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Okay.
They're a boo-boo in the NFC South. Realistically, I think they are old. They haven't gotten any younger, and I just don't see them being I don't think Derek Carr is going to take that next step. Yeah, he's a baby. That's right. Baby, yeah. And so I don't think Carr's going to take that next step, and I don't think that defense is going to stand as well as they did last year. So I'm foreseeing them, if not finishing last in the division, finishing third, right behind, or right ahead of the last place team.
yeah, I think the third's probably the most realistic spot for them, ahead of the Panthers. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I was just preaching to the Panthers' success. So maybe the Saints will finish last. Yeah, it's still another year where the division's really weird. There's a lot of uncertainties and unknown, and wide varieties for the range of outcomes. So yeah, I don't know. The Saints are a weird team. Like you said, they're old. They have a lot of aging veterans on, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Um, they keep fighting off Father Time. They're not quite like dropping off a cliff, but they're certainly not what they once were, like in their primes. Not saying that, but they're still kind of fighting along. They're sort of being competent defensively. But yeah, Carr scares me. I don't like their receiver room, and the offensive line isn't great either. So offensively, I think is where the Saints will struggle the most for sure. But moving on to our second segment in this division, look at the division sort of thing. Who's got a chance at taking a big leap forward this year in your eyes? Mr. Blaine, I'll start with you, man. Who do you think is going to take a big leap forward as a player around the league or around the division this season? Oh, Mr. Blaine?
Might be on mute.
Might be on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm still dealing with the baby.
You're good, brother.
No. Repeat the question for me one more
You're
time.
good, man. It's just who do you think has a chance to take a big leap forward this season?
Probably Kyle Pitts. I feel like it's every year we talk about this, but this is his year. I hope it's not, but I think Kirk Cousins is probably better than Desmond Ridder, who's no longer on a team. So I think that he's probably going to be the best.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, Kyle Pitts, I've been on the Kyle Pitts train his whole career. I drafted him in one of my fantasy leagues already, unfortunately. I'm going to regret that decision, I'm sure. But yeah, he's certainly got a chance to take a big leap forward this year. We're waiting on that year 4 upswing. I mean, tight ends do have a tendency to take a little longer to settle in the NFL. They have kind of a longer runway, I think. So, it's not totally crazy to think that Kyle Pitts still has room to make, especially because he was so young when he got drafted. So I think he's still only 24 or 25. So he's still got a chance to maybe make some big things happen at the NFL level. Mr. Tariq, how about you, my man? Who do you think has a chance to take a big leap forward this year in the division?
I'd say if not Kyle Pitts, I was going to go with Darnell Mooney just because, I mean, you got Kirk Cousins now on the Falcons. And I feel like Mooney is, had his struggles with the Bears, and that's not to put all the blame on him either. So for that reason, I feel like things, I don't know how great they'll be, but they'll be much better than his time in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it's
these last couple of years, like especially, yeah.
For sure. He's always been super athletic. He's got the kind of deep threat capability that I think the Falcons haven't really had. But even if they have had, they probably wouldn't be able to take advantage of it because, they had Desmond Ridder, unfortunately. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see how Darnell Mooney fits in with the rest of their elite playmakers. So, yeah, I like that. I like that inclusion a lot. I'm going to say Bryce Young. I mentioned the Panthers earlier being a bit higher on them. He's not necessarily set up for total success, but he's definitely set up to be more successful than he was last year. Last year was a mess for Carolina. They did not have their stuff together. So I think Bryce Young at this point, just because he's got a lot on his plate from last year. There was just a lot going on from having Adam Thielen as his number one receiver and having just a mess of an offensive line. This season they've done a lot to upgrade that interior offensive line, especially. So I'm cautiously optimistic that Bryce Young could have a big leap forward this year, kind of the opposite of a sophomore slump, a sophomore surge, if you will. So to finish out our division discussions, what's the biggest storyline that you want to monitor in this division? Mr. Tariq, I'll start with you, man. What are you going to be paying attention to throughout this season in the NFC South?
I feel like every year the big question is always, who is going to be on top of this horrible, crappy division. So I feel like that's always a big thing. But I guess if I want to be a little bit spicy, I'd say maybe, does Bryce Young have another crappy year, and maybe the blame's not on the organization, and maybe Andy Dalton could, take over. I don't know. That's kind of my little hot take or something. I feel like all the QB rooms in this division are very interesting. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean the Bucks have the most QB security in the division, which who would have thought? Going into last year. I mean,
Yeah.
the Panthers spend a first round. Well, hear me out. The Panthers spend a first round pick on the quarterback position, and then the
Yeah.
Bucks sign a guy who's bounced around so much. I think that if you asked me who I thought had the most job security going into this season, it'd probably just be Bryce Young, just because of the first overall pick thing. And I was relatively high on Bryce Young, but man, he's got a rough hand to be dealt with. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that Panthers quarterback room plays out. And I guess I'll do the Saints quarterback room since we're just hitting all these teams.
What are the odds?
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't know, Spencer Ritter has been kind of
Rattler.
making some headlines, or Rattler. God, where did
Rattler. Yeah, I'm about to say.
yeah, Desmond and Spencer. Sorry, Spencer Rattler. Thank you, Mr. Blaine. I think he could take Derek Carr's position pretty quick, especially because Carr's just struggled a little bit. He gets hurt kind of a lot, so even if Carr isn't necessarily benched for underperformance or anything, Rattler could come in just because Carr had experiences an injury, especially with that awful offensive line. And then maybe Rattler takes it over and he kind of takes the job from him. I know you're not supposed to lose your position from being hurt, but it happens. So Rattler could be.
Brady got his start.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So yeah, Spencer Rattler is the name to watch and the storyline to watch for me. Mr. Blaine, how about you, man? What's your biggest storyline to watch in this?
I mean, believe it or not, I'm gonna go with Atlanta's quarterback room.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I'm with you, especially because
It's not even necessarily like I'm not low on Kirk Cousins, but when you spend that high of a draft pick on a quarterback,
Yeah.
Cousins has 2 or 3 bad games, and then your fan base is going to start freaking out.
Yeah.
So
sure.
that's the thing for me. Is not even necessarily how bad like Kirk Cousins could be. It's just the lack of, or the prospect of having 2 or 3 bad games, and now your whole fan base is like chanting Penix on the sideline. Like
Right.
that's my biggest, I guess, like thing to look for is just how quick do the Atlanta fans turn on Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I mean he's getting paid a lot of money, so it's kind of tough. But I'm with you. It's an interest. You don't spend a first round pick on a position and just close your mind off to them playing at all their rookie year. So yeah, and the Falcons aren't. They don't have a super high success rate with any position really recently. They've been kind of struggling. So, it's the Falcons. They're going to do their thing. So if any team is going to make a mess of things, it'll be them. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see how Penix and Cousins sort of coexist. And Penix is also a bit old, for a rookie. He's, I think, 24, maybe 25. So it's kind of interesting for that to kind of play into things. Maybe the Falcons are okay with putting him into that situation because he's been through it. He's been through it in college. So, obviously NFL is a different animal and all that stuff, but he's dealt with his own share of adversity for sure. So, stepping into an awkward situation with that quarterback room is probably not the most excruciating thing he's ever dealt with. So it's definitely something to monitor for sure. But we're coming towards the end of our episode. We really appreciate y'all for tuning in. Definitely sticking around with us. And before we go, if you want to support the podcast and give us some help, we'd love it if you could vote for the best of the Bay. We'd really love to win this best podcast section. You can vote daily, once a day, as much or as little as you'd like, basically in that parameter. It's under the entertainment section. It's alphabetical, so you just gotta maybe scroll a little bit depending on if you're using a phone or a tablet or a computer or whatnot. But yeah, you can vote for us once a day. We'd really appreciate it. Link in the description and in all of our socials. You can find it anywhere. Which, speaking of socials, give us a follow at RBLR Sports and at RBLR Bucs. We'd greatly appreciate it. But we will see y'all next week. Games don't start yet, but after next week, then we'll have some games to talk about, and that's going to be real exciting. They're going to be taking on those Washington Commanders in Week 1. So we'll be back at you next week, and we'll have kind of a regular season preview for the Bucs. But until then, go Bucs.
Go Bucs.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.